Hello Bits and Bones, my name is Lady V, and welcome to my channel where I review content while I make content, and sometimes just talk. I think it was a couple months ago now, I made a video called Anime and Chill, where I ranked all of the anime that I have ever watched. I will put that video up in the card at the top of this video if you're interested in watching it. It's in 2 parts. And I have to admit that it's been a decade since I've tried to remember some of them. I'm not an anime junkie, but I've certainly consumed my fair share, and one of the titles I ranked was A Silent Voice, also known as Kono Katachi. More than any of the other titles that I came across while I was rating all of the anime, A Silent Voice gave me pause, and I was very conflicted. I couldn't come up with a rating, and I'd like to talk about why. If you visit the top anime of all time section on myanimelist.net, you'll find that A Silent Voice is pretty near the top. As I'm writing this, it is currently in the number 11 position of best anime of all time, which is impressive considering it's an anime film. It doesn't have a fandom like, One Piece or Fullmetal Alchemist or anything like that, because it's not long or intricate enough to need a fan forum or continued fan support. It's a movie. You make it, you drop it. There's no ongoing continued engagement required from viewers after. If you asked me personally, I'd say that A Silent Voice got its popularity thanks to its presence on Netflix. In a time when Netflix was barren of animated content, A Silent Voice really stood out. It was the only other option I found from a lot of animated series and Ghibli movies Netflix had to offer. That's why I watched it anyway, which was a couple or so years ago. There wasn't much other option, and it looked like a better slice of life story than most. It feels like everyone was watching A Silent Voice at the time that I watched it for the first time, and it's become a go-to recommendation for anime watchers to try and get their friend that wants to dip their toe into animation a little bit to watch something, because it is an anime film and they don't have to commit to as much. Sitting on a solid, unambiguous 9 out of 10 on the biggest anime rating site in the world, A Silent Voice has a reputation that's pretty hard to ignore. A Silent Voice corners a market on cute animation mixed with deep underlying social commentary, so I feel it's best to give you the plot description in its own words. Normally I summarize the plots of movies and books that I review myself, but this one just felt like I had to read it as it was. As a wild youth elementary school student, Shoya Ishida sought to beat boredom in the cruelest ways. When the deaf Shoko Nishimiya transfers into his class, Shoya and the rest of his class thoughtlessly bully her for fun. However, when her mother notifies the school, he is singled out and blamed for everything done to her. With Shoko transferring out of the school, Shoya is left at the mercy of his classmates. He is heartlessly ostracized all throughout elementary and middle school, while teachers turn a blind eye. Now in his 3rd year of high school, Shoya is still plagued by his wrongdoings as a young boy. Sincerely regretting his past actions, he sets out on a journey of redemption to meet Shoko once more and make amends. Kono Katachi tells the heartwarming tale of Shoya's reunion with Shoko and his honest attempts to redeem himself, all while being continually haunted by the shadows of his past. So, there are a lot of things that set A Silent Voice in a field above other short animated content. One being its accessibility, both physically to watch and emotionally to relate to. I'm not surprised that in this day it's beat out Ghibli films on the tier list because it's new and it appeals to an audience that doesn't feel excluded had they not already grown up with the style. I think A Silent Voice has enough praise from everyone else out there. I don't have to go into that personally, and I won't because actually I found it kind of underwhelming. After originally thinking I knew what I was going to rank A Silent Voice on my anime list, I revisited it and found myself admittedly less impressed than I remembered being on my first watch. I think this was in large part to do with the overwhelmingly positive reception A Silent Voice has had in the anime community over the years. The more good things you hear about something, the more you're inclined to agree with them. Despite the fact I'm a through and through bitterling, I do believe we want to lean towards whatever positivity we can. However, A Silent Voice had a compelling story about realistic social issues, mental health, and relationships with disability representation, so there isn't anything to dislike, right? Well, I certainly found one thing. Naoko. As I continue with this video, you will come to see that the thing I am trying to draw on my digital tablet right now is the character Naoko from A Silent Voice. This is my first attempt with the tablet to do anything with just the slightest amount of depth and isn't just line work, so be gentle with your criticism, please. So, A Silent Voice is a story of redemption. Shoya's life grew increasingly unbearable in the years after he'd been convicted as a schoolyard bully. Nothing he did could dissuade other students from seeing him as the bad guy, so he quit trying and he grew depressed. The plot of the movie revolves around Shoya making amends to Shoko, as well as trying to reform relationships with the friends he lost as a kid in the aftermath of Shoko's transfer, because he couldn't redeem himself without her. Wanting to reunite his old friend group is an admirable quest, but I found it undermined the more important narrative of the story, which was redemption and change. Shoya was the boy bully leader in the grade school group, and Naoko was the girl bully leader. Naoko didn't get punished like Shoya, but it is to be assumed she also received a fair amount of social exclusion for her part in Shoko's bullying. When Naoko is reintroduced as a teenager, she reverts to her old ways, immediately pulling out Shoko's hearing aids and playing it off as old times, rather than what she should have learned it was over the years, which is ableism and harassment. Shoya corrects the situation and scolds Naoko to no real consequence. Naoko shrugs it off and walks away, laughing at the absurdity of a former bully befriending his victim. This attitude remains for the rest of the film. Naoko as a character is an instigator. Her function is to cause conflict between the once separated factions, opposing a peaceful unity of old schoolmates on the pretext that they were never really friends. There's an undefined social hierarchy that should/cannot be broken. Naoko is presented as the harsh reality character. She takes Shoya's side in every situation, stressing that there's two sides to every story. As much as Shoko suffered from bullying, Shoya's life was ruined too. Naoko's characterization argues that the punishment didn't fit the crime. In this way, Naoko weaponizes herself against Shoko. Naoko repeatedly scrutinizes Shoko, even hits her in the film for being too apologetic and meek, like her defenselessness was the real reason all the characters found themselves broken and estranged. It's not, by the way. As much as this could be taken as a form of tough love, Naoko wanting Shoko to stand up for herself, it's not. Naoko takes a clear, hard stance. She doesn't believe bullies and victims can ever be friends, and they shouldn't be. This runs opposite to the core of Shoya's redemption arc. Naoko martyrs him and herself as victims because they were bullies. As much as this is conducive to conversation of recognizing mistakes and knowing as a society when someone has earned forgiveness, Naoko does not, by the end of the film, bend to these morals. At the end of the movie, Naoko has learned a small amount of sign language to communicate with Shoka, although she's vehemently rejected bending to the idea she should accommodate someone else's handicap at her own expense. This is supposed to be seen as the first step to her own redemption arc, but I don't buy it. Naoko simply adapts because she doesn't want to be excluded by the rest of the group, not because she shares their morals, or because she actually wants Shoka to like her, or because she actually wants Shoko to be her friend, or for herself to even change and be a better person. None of that. None of that's really going on here. Naoko does not learn from her mistakes. She repeatedly, emotionally, and physically harasses Shoko long after she's been taught it's wrong, and continuously tries to demonize herself and others as a way of owning her own assholery. Now, Naoko is not developed outside of the interactions we see with her and the rest of the group. We can, however, assume some things based on our knowledge of society and clips we get of her. 1. Her family isn't well off, and she's working at a cafe despite her young age. She has a family with several younger siblings and potentially a single-parent household, meaning she's got more responsibility than most kids her age and was prompted to grow up to the world's harsh realities sooner than later. This is an explanation for why she finds Shoko's inability to fend for herself sickening, but it doesn't justify her behavior. Naoko is a bitch, and I mean that in the most accurate descriptive way possible. There is a hidden toxicity in A Silent Voice in Naoko's insistent presence, not necessarily even her actions. Naoko, throughout the entirety of the film, is a write-off. She doesn't change because she doesn't want to, and she justifies herself in her own bad behaviors, so why is she still included in the group? And the answer the movie gives us is that it's for old time's sake. Because Shoya wants to reclaim what was lost. A friend group reunited after years of estrangement. Shoka even adapts this mission on his behalf, although she has no reason to feel responsible for bullies ruining their own lives through their exposed cruel actions. The idea of wanting to reunite old friends is admirable, cute, timeless, but it doesn't hold up in modern times, and not in this situation. Shoya and the others repeatedly expose Shoka to Naoko's abuse on the pretext that they can all be friends again, but that's not what happens. Naoko repeatedly says hateful, unnecessary things, acts out, and tries to tear the group they're trying to rebuild apart. For someone obsessed with the unfair results of the past, Naoko is the one enforcing their negativity instead of moving on. I can accept a character that's internalized the cast she's been given as a victim bully, as in she feels victimized because she was a bully, but I can't accept the other character's forceful inclusion of her. Yes, the whole point of A Silent Voice is redemption, but Naoko shows no will to change or better herself until the last second of the film, which isn't acceptable in my opinion. The idea that childhood friends are important to the point of allowing unnecessary toxicity and accepting terrible behavior is absolutely wrong. After learning about Naoko's treatment of Shoka in real time, they were under no obligation to include her on the pretext they used to be in the same class. It's a harmful mentality to give social weight and significance to people on such a happenstance and outdated basis. They didn't owe Naoko inclusion. Naoko owed them a willingness to grow. Watching Naoko get so many chances to hurt Shoka left me unsettled because it was done under the expectation we'll get to see Naoko change for the better and learn from her mistakes, although she already should have. When she doesn't and they still include her over and over, I was not into it. It made me kind of mad. This was not a good message, and it didn't fit the theme of the rest of the movie. Prioritizing childhood relations over human decency was not a good look on such a renowned film that covered so many sides of a humanizing story. What makes The Silent Voice so appealing to audiences was its realistic story. None of the characters are perfect or entirely stereotyped. There aren't clean interactions between characters. A lot of the events leave an undefined air in their wake of who was right and who was wrong. The ending feels like a loose tying together of threads because life doesn't always come together in one clean conclusion. It's a beautiful way to tell a story, and A Silent Voice tried to tell a story without taking a heavy-handed stance. But there is a right and wrong in some of these situations, and I wish it had been addressed. It's not right that Naoko is let back into the group as teenagers and allowed to continue to hate Shoka. As friends of Shoka and other members of the group, should they not exclude Naoko for the betterment of everyone involved? Why isn't the right answer just to cut out the toxic aspect? The person who is ableist, the person who harasses, the person who really is a bully, and they're like, nope, let's just keep including her for no reason, even though she makes everyone miserable and does nothing good for any of our lives. I know that it is hard to cut ties with old people in your lives, friends, so on and so forth, but if A Silent Voice was going to truly embody the message that the rest of it was doing, it really needed to step back from Naoka. It needed to take a stance and say, this is unacceptable. If this kind of behavior continues, that's what we're trying to stamp out. Not just kind of ignore her, because we're supposed to be focusing on Shoya and Shoka. Naoko was a complete disturbance, a physical bully, and I think that just really undermined everything that A Silent Voice was going for. There was no obligation that I will accept that any of them in the group allow Naoka to continue to participate her ableist behavior. A Silent Voice is a beautiful work that tells a beautiful story, but the underlying reality of some of the lenience given to active bullying, despite its message of change and understanding, has me dropping it down to a 3 out of 5 stars. Like, it makes me respect all of the characters less for not understanding the severity of bullying when that's the whole message. A Silent Voice is very popular, and I'm sure that a lot of you have watched it, so if you have any opinions on it, please leave them in the comments below. I personally got really hung up on Naoka. And I'm sure a lot of other people completely just ignored her because she was annoying. So let me know where you sat on that scale. Did you even acknowledge her? Did you just kind of like only pay attention to the parts with Shoka and Shoya because they were the beautiful parts? Completely ignore the other annoying girl that was kind of a bully but not really, oh my god, I would never do that. Girl, you know who I'm talking about. If you've seen A Silent Voice, please leave a comment below and let me know how you felt about it. Do you feel like its message was a little wonky? Do you feel like it was strong? Do you think that just made it a better representation or more realistic about how school bullying happens? Or does my bit of a rant kind of make you sit back and go, yeah, actually, Naoko kind of fucked the whole moral of the story? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support me, I have my Patreon and other accounts linked below. As I've been drawing, I've also been watching a lot more anime to get me visually stimulated and motivated to draw, so there might be a larger drop of anime or even manga, which I don't read right now, but I would like to in the future, so keep an eye out for that. Yeah, just thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!